Hi, everybody. This is Asen, and this is the Plejaren Diaries, and one-on-one. So, uh, there's a lot of questions that don't get fully answered when we have guests, but guests have a lot of positives too. So, anyway, I wanted to just uh, uh, do a one-on-one. Maybe I'll do more, but to explain certain things that happened, how this all came to be, and first off, I'm quite different, I believe, than a lot of other people. I didn't realize that for a really long time, but I haven't had a habit of spending a whole lot of time in one place. I've lived in several different places around the world, and I've been to a lot of places. I've also had a lot of training in multiple senses. I think I've had just about every job in the world that I wanted to. Um, and I didn't always have a choice, is the way I felt, which we all know there's no accidents, there's no real choice. It just, we get options, I guess you could say. And so my experience, I grew up as a Methodist, of all things, right? And it never really connected fully with me being in that kind of environment, although, uh, the belief system resonated with me. But also in all things, you everybody's their own master, and it's where we go through life, collecting certain things and what we hold on to and what we don't. And you don't have to believe everything that you learn because experience teaches us otherwise. And so you pick the things that from these masters or from anybody actually that resonate with you when they tell you something or talk about something. Uh, you collect those things that resonate with you and just let the others go for a while. And then you exercise them throughout your life, right? And so in that process, you discover or identify who you really are by those things. And I've been extremely fortunate to have had audiences with some of the greatest masters of the world and also become friends with them. And I just don't, I can't tell you how to get there in that sense. It was always been my dumb luck being in the right place at the right time, I guess. And so, anyway, I had extensive training in Shaolin martial arts. I fought underground. I've been um, a military contractor for a long time, and now I teach. Like they say, those who can't do teach, right? Well, yeah, as you can see, I'm getting older, and you don't heal as fast. So a lot of those things are now just memories. And so anyway, I'm quite different in the way I approach things. It's kind of like this experience that I've had here is very similar to um, when people would come to me, in my kung fu or tai chi classes and talk about astral traveling, right? They all wanted me to teach them how to astral travel. Well, it's not really possible to teach it, right? And because we already do it, everybody does. They're just not conscious of it. And uh, but doing it consciously reveals a whole lot of other things about yourself. Sometimes fears and things like that, or awkwardness. And but when they tell me, I give them the basics, right? It's kind of like when you go to sleep, you astral travel, right? So you kind of get in that sort of situation where you rest and you empty the body and you feel heavy and you start to sink into either the bed or wherever you are, and or position you're in. And as you start to do that, the body lifts out, and then you go through another phase, accepting what just happened and not having the fear, which will allow you to continue. And then I that's where I end until, like I explained to them, when they come back, when they've really done it, we'll be able to talk about it. And because if I was to guide them every step of the way, they may never find it. And if they do find it, they're going to be following me, right? And that's not going to give them the full experience or the purity of it. And so, you know, uh, I give it to them that way, and that's the way I kind of see life, because like if you want to astral travel, a lot of things, here's the catch is they want to go out, like, you know, they have this whole dream of where they're going to go, right? When they astral travel and they leave their body, they're going to go find out who killed Kennedy or so on and so forth. And the funny thing is once you're out of your body, there is so much candy in front of you, you never even think again about what it was that you intended to do, uh, because you're free, and the new things that are coming and the discovery of it. I mean, it's an entire multiple lifetimes of exploration once you leave your body. So I've kind of adapted that in my life, not by choice, but just by what I learned, right? And how about the discovery and all the candy that's in front of you? And so I approach things quite differently than a lot of people, I believe. And, whether good or bad, it fits and works for me. And so, anyway, I was down in the Glades and I was doing my training. I was training these soldiers, they're special forces, they're ex-military, they're sometimes they're people off the street, but not too often. And we put them through a process where they become better, and they're really hireable for these big companies. With the just like the United States, 60% of the United States military is contractors, and a lot of people don't realize that. Plausible deniability and so forth and such. Anyway, I was there on a day where we were training, and I a lot of times when I'm down there, I get kind of excited because of the environment. We're like miles and miles and miles from anything, and so we're basically alone out there. And so when I get a little free time, what I do is I like to wander off and go explore. And it's a kind of a hostile environment if you're not aware, and you can get in trouble. Uh, but to me, it's rawness, it's the nature, and being able to see the animals and explore, and the colors and everything. It's amazing. So occasionally I just sneak off and go wander about. And this one day, this is all like about 7 months ago, 7 or 8 months ago, and I've written 3 books since then. So you can tell there's a lot of information that I gathered, and it's so I just write it, right? And flow of consciousness is what they tell me is the way I write, which works, I guess, because I'm not really into spelling and all that stuff. So, but I do have some beautiful people that help take care of that part of it for me. But essentially, so I just take off and I'm wandering this one day, and I'm cruising around and looking at all the things and exploring. And I went down a trail. There's a lot of game trails out there, and you got to kind of follow them to keep out of the swamp, right? You don't want to get in the swamp, the suck and all that. And so anyway, I'm cruising around, and something catches my eye, and it's blue, right? And it's a little bit darker than sky blue, and so I draw attention to it, and I see this lady, very beautiful. It looked like she was about 24 years old or so, and blonde, and she's like stuck in the mangroves. And the mangroves, are just like, they're trees, but they expose like what you would look like would be roots, right? But it's actually the part of the tree, and so they spread out like a spider into the swamp or into the waters. And so it's really difficult too to navigate them when they get real thick, because you can't just step on the ground. And if you do, they're probably in a wet area, and then you get into the suck where your foot steps down onto the ground and you sink about knee deep. And then as you pull the foot out, you hear that sucking noise, and that's why they call it the suck. Um, and then if you're trying to navigate across those little root-looking things, it gets slippery because your feet are wet and all that. So you can understand the situation. And so anyway, she was in there and kind of hung up, got her leg down in between, and she didn't look like she was able to get up. And so, this is kind of crazy, right? I mean, what is a person like this, beautiful lady and clean clothes, and it was a jumpsuit sort of thing, and blue out in the middle of absolutely nowhere. Well, first thing hit my head is, well, maybe I've been smelling something in here in the swamp that's affecting the way I'm seeing things or thinking. And so, um, but like I say, I've been in situations like I'm an extreme skeptic, but at the same time, there isn't anything that I cannot believe because of the things that I've seen. And so, anyway, I decided to approach her, and she looked really like scared when she saw me, and then me moving in her direction. And it's kind of like an animal, when an animal gets trapped in something, or they're kind of scared when you're approaching and everything, and all you want to do is free them, right? Well, so I took it cautiously, and I took a few steps at a time. And then, as I got closer, she wasn't talking or anything, and she didn't seem to understand English so much anyway. But I made hand gestures and such, and it seemed to calm her a little bit, but she was still really scared of me. And, she's holding on to this tree, and her legs are twisted down into the roots. And so I got pretty close, and she was still there, and she was looking at me, and I don't think she was calm much, but she was a little bit more calm. And I pulled out my pocket knife, which I always carry with me, and um, that alarmed her. And so what I did was, I shook my head and all that. I was hoping that she would understand what I was about to do. And so in order to do that, I, I took the knife, and I you know, motioned on what was sharp and all that good stuff. And then I grabbed it by the blade, and I sort of, at a long arm distance, laid it next to where she could reach. And so then I stepped back a little bit, and she picked it up, and she started looking at it, and touching it. And then, she eventually set it back. And so I lit up a smoke, and I wanted her to calm down a little bit. And so I just kind of sat there and looked at her, and I'm still thinking in my head, wow, this is a really odd type of thoughts that were going through my head, what I'm seeing, right? And it's like, how could she be here? I mean, 100 miles from anything, and trying to walk that out. I mean, it's just not going to happen, well, maybe, but less likely. And so anyway, I figured maybe there's somebody near here or whatever, but obviously they weren't there at this time. And so, when I finished the smoke, I slowly reached and got the knife, and I kind of showed her what I wanted to do. I took the motions, where I was going to cut away from where her leg was and everything. And she kind of did that, little nod or whatever. And so again, I'm still going kind of like in slow motion. And so I get closer, and then I start to cut. And eventually I got through it, right? And, then she's kind of looking at me and like, what's next? And so I put the knife away, and then I got a little bit closer to her, and I kind of motioned to her, that I was going to help her, out of where she was and all. And, it was kind of seeming like she was starting to understand my gestures, or maybe she understood what I was saying, but I'm not sure. So, anyways, I moved slowly. So I put my arms out, and she reached into my arms. And so I sort of pulled her up and out of that, kind of lifted her a little bit across it, and set her down on the dry. And uh, once we were there, I backed away, and she started to walk away from me, but I could tell that she was broken. I mean, there was something wrong with her leg. It wasn't working properly, and she had that limp. And so, I turned around and got a little closer to her again, and she turned to face me. And I motioned for, like, I would pick her up, and then I pointed like, I'll take you wherever you need to go, sort of thing. And so I could tell she agreed and everything. And then so I just cautiously, put my hand on her back and under her legs and lifted her. And what was shocking to me was, I mean, she's like, this high to me, and she was like, I estimated, 100 pounds, maybe wet, maybe. And I lifted her, boom, almost threw her over my head. She was so light, which I found out later what that was all about. But in the moment, it was like, that's kind of weird. And I felt a little relieved because I didn't know how far the walk was going to be. And so she ended up, putting her arm around my neck and to help me carry her. And so we're walking, and I could tell she keeps looking at me, and then she would, change my direction, tell me which way to go. And eventually we got back to this great big mound in the middle of the swamp, right? And it was like totally shells and sort of thing, which wasn't accustomed to or knew exactly what that was all about. I found out later, the indigenous tribes would use shells as tools and stuff, and when they broke, they would throw them in the same place and they would create mounds. And so, anyway, I didn't know all that, but she motioned for me to take her up on the mound, and I did. And and then she kind of, let me know to set her down, so I did. And then I backed up, and she just sort of motioned me off and put her hands together like in prayer or whatever, and kind of moved her head down. And I took a few more steps and looked back, and I could see above where she was this, like, it was kind of a black with an orange ring around it. I mean, not like a spaceship or anything, but like a massive, like, hole or something, Um, and then I see this blue light come down, and it was like triangular. It would spread out from where the hole was down to the ground. And it was like a blink of an eye. I saw at the last moment she kind of turned and had a smile, and boom, she was gone. And so I thought, well, that was pretty interesting. Note to self, see psychologist sort of thing. And anyway, it was just like one of many things that's happened to me that I didn't quite figure, and just cruise through it, right? And so I went on my way, did my walk and everything, went back, got my ride back, helicopter to the Fort Myers. And while in Fort Myers, I do this thing, child sex slavery. We're the best in the world, by the way. And we saved almost 2,500 kids now since 2015. And when we rescue, we don't just dump them on somebody. We know where we're putting them. We keep security on them, and I know where every one of my kids are. So anyway, moving on. There was a lot of work for me to do, a lot of things to catch up on, and I started a diary, the Plejaren Diaries, right? And so I kept these diaries of all the events that were taking place, way beyond this, right up until present. And uh, you know, it was kind of odd, I contacted some of my friends and started telling them a little bit about it, and I was bombarded with questions, right? And so I figured the easiest way to do this is just to write a book, right? And kind of exclusively for friends, because you don't make any money off of books and things like that, or being an author, unless you play the circuit. And that's not for me or nothing. And so, anyways, I just kind of wrote that. That way, it'd make their questions, easier to direct, right? It would answer a lot of questions to start with, and then the questions would be better when they come back. But I'd only started to initiate that, and then it was a week or so later when I went back down to the Glades, and again, I got some free time where I could take off and wander, and so that's what I did, and I took off, and didn't have the intention of going and looking up where, that took place with this lady. I just wanted to wander. I wanted to do my thing. And the further I got in, I started to recognize some of the stuff where I had passed before, and I decided, well, whatever. I think I'll take a look at that mound again. And so I went over there and explored the mound a little bit and all that good stuff, and I thought that was pretty cool. I saw some jaguar track, or what do you call them, panther tracks, and some scat and stuff around. And anyways, I thought, well, yeah, okay, well, yeah, it can be a hazardous environment, and that was kind of an odd situation if it was even real, right? And so, anyways, I started heading off, and about that time, I saw that blue light, and so it was like I turned around and said, "What if?" Right? And what the heck? And so I walked into it, and boom, I was inside the ship, and I saw the lady. She was there, and there was a line of them. Right? There was like, 6 of them, and uh, it was kind of a weird experience. I'm thinking, oh, so maybe they decided to eat me or something, or here we go with this alien abduction sort of spiel, anal probes and all that crap. And it was like, yeah, well, whatever. And so, but it wasn't the fight or flight that came to mind, so to speak, because that's what most people would initiate with. And it was like, well, I've been shot 9 times. I've been stabbed. I can't count how many. I've been left for dead 3 times. What the hell, right? Let's see where this goes. And so it was timid, and we had a small conversation. And they said that they would like to continue this. And I could tell not everybody was on board with this, except for like Semjase especially was. Or that Semjase is the name of the lady. And it's kind of funny. She's the only one that has a real name, I think, because the others I've given to them, they're not really big on sharing a lot of that stuff, so they kind of accept whatever I want in a sense. That's the way it's been. And but Semjase, I knew was different, and I heard the word and I recognized it, but I didn't know much about that. I found out later. But anyways, her name was Semjase, and so I agreed, to further this conversation and such. And so, over a period of time, I would go back and I'd meet with them, and we'd go through these processes. And it seemed like we weren't getting anywhere a lot of the time, because when they see things quite differently than we do. Like I always use the example, a guy walking down the street without a shirt. And so it's pretty simple, right? Male walking, no shirt, but that's not the way they see it. They want to see it from so many different points of view. And so the questions just kept going and going and going. And, 16 hours later, I'm brain dead. And it's like they're on the edge of their seat. They're like excited because they're discovering new little things into it. And there was other subjects too, and they were all starting to go in this direction. And so anyway, I just figured I'd bail. Not forever or anything. I just needed to get away for a little bit. And so, I kind of explained it to them and went on. And it had been, like several days that I hadn't seen them or anything. And so I'm here in my little tiny apartment and don't really have any furniture. I got this chair and a bed, right? A TV sort of thing. Then I started to feel this static. And that's one thing I left out there is like I felt static around this lady. And when I tried to pick her up and all, it didn't sting or anything, but it was like, the balloon sort of thing, almost like shocking, but it wasn't. And so anyways, I started to feel that. And I was finally caught up on everything I was doing. I was laying in my bed and watching the TV. I was watching a sitcom, and it was a sitcom, kind of a wholesome thing. It was a family and kind of the comedy that goes on between family. Anyway, I started feeling this static, and bam, there was Semjase. She was in my apartment. So like, hello. And so she immediately just jumped in the bed next to me and started talking to me and asked me questions and things about, why ain't you been back and everything else. And I said, well, it kind of exhausting for me and such. And she goes, oh, what are you doing? And I showed her a TV, right? And I said, this is like a show, a TV show, or trying to get that, was a little difficult, but I said, it's fake, right? But it's representative of real life. And so she was excited about it and wanted to see it. And so I watched the sitcom. It was like, 23 or 24 minutes, however long they are. And so I got an idea, a light bulb went off, and said, I'm going to play it again. And then I played it again and again. I think about the third or fourth time she asked me, why do you keep showing me the same thing? Because at first it was exciting to her, and she was asking me all these different questions. And so anyway, I said, see this? This is what it's like for me on your ship when you guys are asking me questions. It's like the same to me. It's the same over and over and over again. And I explained to her, I realized, you see things differently and such. But I said it got tiring for me. So I figured here's an opportunity. I could show them movies and things like that, PG, family type and stuff like that, so that they could see what we are in life, and that when they had questions, they'd be a lot more directed. And by the show, watching the show and watching the person over and over again, that sort of thing, they would have eliminated a lot of the work that I was doing trying to explain things to them. And it worked. It worked really well. And that just really began a whole nother process of our bonding and such, and how uh, we just melted into like a family sort of thing. And these people were not trained. This was a lab ship. Semjase was on the run. She was trying to escape her name, right? In a sense, she was very. People saw her as an icon from when her mother was the leader. And I found out they're Plejarens, and they're not Palladians. They're Plejaren, and which is like 80 light years away from 80 miles, 80 light years from the Pallades. And so anyways, we started to develop a relationship. And so, anyways, it goes way off from there. I mean, in these 7 months, I've experienced so many things. I mean, it's just beyond. And so I write them, and I make my notes, I write them, and they agree. They check them, make sure I'm not giving away anything that they wouldn't want, and so on and so forth. But anyway, uh, I encourage you to read the books. But so anyway, this was just an introduction. I think I want to do more of these, and so we'll just play it by ear. I hope you enjoyed it, and feel free to send uh, questions or anything. I have an email. It's Plejaren Diaries at proton.com. So I believe that's what it is. You might try it out. Anyway, enjoy. Peace.